What I always have to do. Don't wanna pretend like we're live. Start chatting and pretend like we're live. Start. Oh, there we go. I'm showing up on the Twitch site, which is a good indication.
Okay.
So we're officially
Is
live.
it the what is the link that I can use to share with the Facebook group?
Oh yeah, here Is there a Zoom chat, or I can still send it
Yeah.
to you over on? Yeah, here we go. Let's do it this way. Copy that. Type message here. That's the link to the Twitch channel, and anyone who goes there should be able to see it live.
Okay. Let me.
Yep, because you're gonna post it on the group wall, I guess. Oh, look at that! I already got people in the chat. Hello, Elron. Elron is a patron of the podcast, so.
Who?
Elrond. He's
Okay.
He goes to L. Ron Hubbard because I guess L. Ron Hubbard was already taken. It's a pun on like Lord of the Rings and Scientology, apparently.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
What do I say? Check out Jody and I chatting about the end of the world. I don't know. Where are we today?
Or hope. Shouldn't it be a little bit more hopeful? I mean, hey,
about current events.
History was made today, wasn't it? 2 times impeachment.
It's 2 times.
Yeah, no one's been impeached twice.
Someone on my Facebook said, what'd they call him? Donnie 2 times?
That fits. That fits his mob like persona. Anyways.
Yeah.
I guess we'll start anyways. For those who, I think most of the people who are going to show up are going to be familiar with my podcast, but the reason why this channel is called Imperial News is because we do an Imperial News podcast, which is a pun on Rebel News, which is a far-right group in Canada. And what I've been starting to do is because it's one thing just going over right-wing content all the time and pointing out their absurdities and racism and all that fun stuff. It's nice to I want to start like branching off to broader topics of just like more about like movement building and organizing and all that fun stuff. And I had met Alex over the summer, helping to mobilize issues around Black Lives Matter in London, Ontario, which is where we're both residing. And and we've been I met Alex through that, and I partly wanted to bring her on to chat about how they got involved, where they're hoping to go from here, and all that fun stuff. But for now, if you wanted to introduce yourself, Alex.
I think you did most of it. I'm Alex. I am a lead activist with Black Lives Matter London, and I met Jody through our first protest. He played an integral part in the de-escalation of the far right.
Well, it was only like one person with a hetero is bettero t-shirt, I think.
Which doesn't even make sense. Like, it's wrong completely, but like, read the room. This was a specifically, police brutality. Anyways, get a new shirt is what I'm saying. I think you've been at every protest since, correct?
I believe so.
Yeah.
There might have been one that I missed, but I don't think so. I think I've been there.
The last one. I don't even know. I think you've been to them all. Anyways.
Probably.
Yeah, I don't.
I just know what it was. I didn't go to because recently you had something to do with the city council, and we could probably get to that in a bit. I was not able to attend that, but even though like it's so weird like mobilizing during a pandemic, but I think that is the one thing that I was very like happy with how all of us organized that event, especially the first one. We had like 10,000 people show up, and yet we managed to get masks, sanitizers, and we were like on it. And there was no increase in COVID cases after the rally. So That's how you do it.
That's how you do it. That's how you fight for justice and keep your neighbors safe. And I don't think I was able to say it out loud, on an actual statement, but I want to thank the City of London. With regards to the community, we got masks from people made masks. Like I'm seeing handmade masks. People donated boxes and boxes of sanitizer, gloves. I'm still working through the granola bars,
Yeah.
the bottles of water, and I think it lived in my car for quite a while before, like trying to organize with the church that I attend, trying to donate most of it, and it went into storage before I got it there. But I just thank you, London, for coming through. Like, you
And
came
thanks, yeah.
through big time.
And the community did too for having that many people, and it was a peaceful protest, and we marched, and it was good. It was good vibes all
Yeah,
around. I felt for the whole thing. Uh,
yeah,
Considering the weight of the issue, I mean, there's like, I mean, I'm one of these people who thinks that rebellion needs to be joyful as well. So even though heavy circumstances, it was great feelings of solidarity that like I've never seen a crowd that large in this small city get together for Black Lives. It was just an incredible moment.
right, right.
Yeah.
It was outstanding, and I think whether or not you know, like I'm probably one of the very few Black people who hasn't watched the video of George Floyd being murdered, but because I can't.
Yeah.
I emotionally, psychologically, I cannot expose myself to that level of Black trauma. But I think, whether or not you've watched the video, you felt this movement in your soul. You know what I mean? And you sort of everyone had to just sort of respond to that. And I think that's part of why I think it was more than just, it's largely Black lives, don't get me wrong. It is mainly Black lives, but it is a cry for humanity. It's a cry for equity and equality and injustice. So,
I mean, part of me wants to branch off from all of this, but also I want to. I guess we probably should start from the beginning, which I'm curious how you got involved in all this, because I remember when it began. I mean, locally, the actual like choosing of the date and the planning on doing stuff was by a bunch of amazing young people that sort of got involved. But what
yeah.
what brought you to this?
I
I guess.
think I yes, yeah, and you're right. Like, you were there before I was.
Yeah.
You were involved before I was. I think let's back up, and that I locally was just an activist in and of myself. My genre is the arts and music and theater, and so I take it upon myself to sort of spearhead and champion Black artists and Black creatives. And so it's always been a part of my sort of repertoire. And then when it came around to this, I just got in touch with a few common people who knew people, I guess. One of them being Counselor Kaibaga, and she encouraged me to sit down on one of the meetings, and I think it was I just sort of brought up the point where we don't have if you don't have speakers, microphones, and stuff like that. I know it's hard to rent that stuff right now because of COVID. So I owned, at the time, I owned a performing arts studio. I will loan my stuff out, no big deal. I'm thinking 500 people, 1,000 people, cool. We're good. We'd be lucky
Yeah,
to see
the
200
speakers were
people.
not sufficient, but I mean, but we weren't
I'm like,
expecting
get ready.
10,000 people to show
I
up.
was
Yeah.
not expecting, because I went into this thinking that we're fighting for Black lives because we have yet to matter. So who's showing up for this?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And and above that, it's London, Ontario. It's not like, this is not Toronto. This is not Vancouver. This is London, Ontario. Like, people are not going to come through. And we weren't ready.
Yeah, and like even
they're not ready.
Like I used to do organizing in the city like before that. I wouldn't say use. I guess I still am doing organizing in the city, but like I had never thought that we could get to that level so quickly for any cause in the city. From all the other causes before there. Like a big crowd for us would be a couple hundred people, and then to see like Victoria Park just be taken over.
Well, like we weren't like even like when we started the protest with speeches, and we had a song from George McCleary, we had the Black National Anthem, and you know, yeah, as far as I could see on that stage, there were people, but I had no idea it went beyond onto the street, onto like behind us. It was people were everywhere, and so I didn't really understand. So when we went to march, we're like, okay, let's march around, and then everybody will just come back.
Yeah.
And then we'll read the list of demands, and it'll be we'll get going again that way. But once people started walking, that was it. I was like, we've lost it. We're not, no.
My one of my favorite moments from that initial protest as well was we when we got back from the initial sort of walk around. What was created was what I called like a semi-autonomous march, which was just like another group of people just kept marching, and then as it like, because I guess they went like way up, and then they were coming back down. And like I already felt like there was a ton of people in the park with us that when after the initial march all got back. But then you're just seeing this wave, this endless movement of people as they continued marching down the street. And I'm like, I had the impression that there was maybe thousands there, but that's what I was like, this is several thousands.
This is a lot of people, a lot of people. It was, but I am so proud of the way everyone sort of came together, kept focus, wore their masks, used hand sanitizer, kept their distance. I think it was phenomenal. It was phenomenal.
Where, I guess, since that big day, I mean, some of the protests have at least the subsequent protests were less attended, but still bigger than any other London protests that I've been to. But I think part of it is like moving more into the like going to City Hall and stuff like that. And one of the other reasons I wanted to have you on is partly because, the COVID thing has made a lot of people's lives harder, and it's harder to keep track of everything, right? And so me personally is like, I don't want to let this ball drop. And so I'm curious, like, where have things gone? I know there was a meeting, I know you've like met several times, I think, with the London Police Service, or not met, but had some like interactions with them, some communications, but also City Hall. And so I'm just curious, what is, how did those go, I guess? But then also, what is the momentum in town? And we can jump off of that.
Wow, those are some massive questions. Yeah. It's not like you just asked, like, what you have for dinner? Like, how did you fight for change?
Listen, we're here to solve problems.
Fix systemic racism.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, I think I'll start with, maybe it's easier to sort of map it out in a timeline, so to say. I think we honestly didn't hear from LPS, London Police Services, which I'll just call LPS from now on. We didn't hear from LPS until after Pride did their demonstration with regards to calling on taking down the Pride flag, or not putting it up at the time. It was like not putting it up. And
because you're saying like the London Police Service were flying the Pride flag, and it was a matter
they
of...
were going to. So this was a little bit before they were going to fly the Pride flag, and Pride organization said no, and we were in full support. And so it was sort of, it wasn't the 10,000 people.
Yeah.
It was the flag that started the conversations with LPS, right? And so it was at that point, I think my first communication was with Rick Robson. And so Rick Robson, for those who don't know, he's the London Police Association board chair. And I know, what a title, eh? Jeez. And we had a conversation for a few hours and via phone. All of these conversations were via phone because of COVID. And it's just the safest way to carry a business these days. And, at the time, I really sort of tried to press upon him that, and I came with my facts. I came with, at the time, the Ontario Human Rights Commission report. This was the first one. The second one hadn't come out yet. I came with statistics about the disproportionate number of Black and Indigenous lives in prison, the police oppression. Black people are 4 times more likely to be stopped, killed, maimed, beaten by police. And
I always like to remind people at this moment too is that we had our own incidences, or things that occurred in town of police. The recent arrest and charging and conviction of a police officer who negligently killed an Indigenous woman in town. So it's not like these issues.
That.
Yeah, okay. I was just going to say, for my non-Canadian viewers, that like to think that somehow Canada is immune to this stuff. It's
I forget. I feel like I'm just talking to you. I'm sorry. This is my first time that I've done this. Well, forgive me.
No, it's all right.
So, I came with the facts. I came, prepared for this conversation. I came with my questions. My questions meaning the questions from the community. And I came wanting to talk about the demands, the lack of transparency, the gross budget, and both him and Chief. I spoke to the chief. They told me that the most of the budget goes to their salaries, which is outrageous. But we'll get to that in a minute.
To all police or just their salaries?
You should look at that sunshine list.
Yeah.
I don't agree. Anyways. So, everything had a reason on his end. Everything had sort of an explanation as to why this was the way it was. But when we moved to talk about Deborah Lee, so Deborah Lee, for those who are non-Canadian, non-Londoner, Deborah Lee Christian is a young Indigenous woman who was essentially left to die in the back of a police car. Constable, at the time, Constable Nick During was in charge of her care. He decided that she didn't need any care from the ambulance when they first arrived. He decided that she didn't need any care when he dropped her off. He said that she was fine. Anyways, she was clearly overdosing and was non-responsive by the time she got to jail. And then she died in the hospital. And Constable During was charged with failure to provide the necessities of life. He, of course, was placed on administrative leave until his trial. At his trial, he was found guilty of that, and then he was continued to be placed on administrative leave. So they paid him. He made, I forget the number, I think it was around $98,000. I'm not sure, per year.
He was charged January 2020, or convicted, January 2020, but they didn't sentence him till September, and so he got correct. Paid for all those months until sentencing, even though he was already found guilty.
Right. And then even I think they filed, once they sentenced him to, I don't remember the charges. I have a lot of information in my head, but I think once they sentenced him, he filed for an appeal. And at that point when he filed, he was still an employee of the police services. Anyways, I'm not sure he's employed now. But anyways, we're backing up to the London Police Services Board chair, my conversation. He firmly believes that Nick During is innocent.
Even though he was found guilty?
Yeah. He says the Ontario court system, the judge got it wrong, people are wrong. Essentially, Deborah Lee's family's wrong, you know. And I understand that culture. It's back the blue. I get it. But
I mean, it's for the people who are supposed to, quote unquote, uphold the law, for the law to then go through the motions, and then for them to be like, nah, I don't believe it. And then, but then also to like not give that same kind of like charity or same sort of forgiveness to the communities that they overpolice is rather disgusting, in my opinion.
it is absolutely abhorrent. It is absolutely abhorrent. So the sum total of my conversation with Rick is he wants to. He was very much, why are you calling to defund the police? You should defund the. You should ask the government, the provincial government, to provide more funding for mental health services. He does agree that their police, their staff, their constables, they are overworked with regards to the amount of calls they get with regards to mental health. They have a high rate of suicide within their officers. Like, these people are taxed, these people are burdened, and so you know. And I said to him, I says, well, if they're overworked and most of your calls are of a mental health capacity, then why don't we change this system so that it works?
Well, I don't know. Did he ever like explain? So if he's for at least funding this other arm of dealing with people with mental health issues and stuff like this, if he's in favor of that funding, where does he suggest we get the money? I guess,
from
right?
the government, from Ontario government.
So just increase taxes.
Yeah, increase.
Which I'm not someone who's against increasing taxes. It's just like, also it's like, if we're taking something from you and putting it where it should be, why don't we take some of that money from you? but
This
but
is
then
what I'm saying.
yeah.
If yes, exactly. If we're paying you to police mental health, essentially, maybe we shouldn't pay you to do that. Maybe we should pay mental health to take care of and care for clients' mental health. You know, it blows my mind. It blows my mind. It blows my mind. It blows my mind that there's several officers. The average salary for police officers around $100,000.
Yeah.
I
Just like, I don't want to salary shame. It's just more like, I think everyone should get $100,000 jobs. You know. Yeah.
It just it you know, I was speaking to Gal. He's one of the folks on the Black Lives Matter team, and he made a good point the other day where he's like, you know, like Rick Robson, for instance, he makes, I think, $115,000. He's on the Sunshine List, so you could look it up. Rick Robson, anyways, as a police association chair, and you know, he gets to sit and protect police culture, protect police peoples, protect and continue to hide information from the public, making six figures. And we activists fighting for humanity, fighting for the protection of Black and Indigenous lives, fighting for equity and equality, we have to do this work for free in our spare time.
I certainly haven't been paid for it. Yeah.
I'm not saying I need to be paid, nor do I want to be paid, but I'm just saying, like, it's, you know, it's not it's a full-time job, and it's not easy. It's not easy.
I mean, like, I think part of it is just the fact that there is this discrepancy right now in activist culture where I think more people would get involved if not for the fact that they have to work all day to put food on the table. And I look at my parents as well, who work 9 to 5 jobs and were lovely people, but you work a tiring 9 to 5 job and you come home and you just want to veg out. Like, you don't want to go and spend the rest of your evening learning about the budget of the police. Like, and then
so exhausting. And I think they rely on that. I think they rely on us just being tired, essentially. You know, we're wiped out, we're exhausted mentally, you know, especially like these COVID times have made things all the more harder. You know, working from home, living from home, being sequestered to home, not being able to see your loved ones, except for, you know, a few tourist people who get to fly to on vacation. But you know, it's just been extra difficult. And I think one of your questions to me before, you know, you sent me questions about what people can do, what allies can do, what other, just not even allies, what just people can do with regards to this movement. And one of the things is to do, this is not a marathon. It's not, we're not defunding the police, although I would love to, it'd be a dream. We're not defunding the police tomorrow. It's not going to happen, right? Be real about the situation. So I think slow and steady wins the race. Like, educate yourselves, you know, and anytime you see an injustice, take the time to address it. There's a lot that goes untalked about, unanswered, ignored. I just don't have the space to deal. And I guess that's okay, but you know, I don't get to say I don't have the space to deal with my Blackness. I have to, this is an everyday thing.
And I imagine too, in terms of like, as you're saying, like, I think what you're describing is sort of like pacing yourself. Because I think if we could have, like, I'm up to it that if the opportunity arises tomorrow where we could change this thing right away, let's take that opportunity. You know what I mean? But then 100%. It's like, I feel like some people, when they get involved in activism, and you even see it in like political activism as well, of just like things not changing as fast as you want them to, and then you experiencing burnout because of that, of just like you tried really hard, and it still hasn't happened. And the only, like, I'm curious that, like, how you deal with that, but then also it's like part of it is like these are, as like we've highlighted already in this discussion, it's like some of these are challenges that have existed for hundreds of years. You know, we're dealing with systemic oppressions that predate most of us. And so it's not going to happen overnight, but it still doesn't mean, like, I just feel like we need to deal better with, defeat's the wrong word, but like sort of like coming against blocks that prevent us from getting what we want to do. But at least like my thing is like I find strength in the solidarity of like connecting with people.
It's interesting you say it that way, the blocks that come in front of people. It's what Black people call oppression. That block that you feel, that immovable mountain, has been the Black experience. And so, you know, I'm a firm believer in pacing yourself. Because of the pace, a lot of people told me this summer, Alex, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. It's a marathon. Take your time. You gotta just take a break and slow down, and which I understand and I appreciate. But when the moment is high and the momentum is high, you have to flow with that too, you know? And 100%, like, the fall came and I absolutely crashed. I crashed big time. Like, just mentally and physically was exhausted. In addition to, like, people who don't know, I'm a mom. I have a 2-year-old son at home, and he's wild. He's wild. And you know, in addition to, like, COVID took my business. COVID took my livelihood. You know, lots to deal with. My grandma passed in June, days before the first protest.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear
so, you know, we were able to go and see her in February of last year. just because it was the March break for universities, the reading week, and so we went and then came back to it's a lockdown now, so we were blessed to be able to see her one last time. But yeah, I think one of the things that people can help to motivate us as activists: see our posts, share our posts. If there's a petition, sign the petition. If there's an email to get out there, send the email out there. Like, I do my very best to make it as easy as possible for people to email their counselors, email the mayor, and whomever else that needs to be addressed at the time. And, I need you to just come through and do it.
Yeah, I find as well it's not even just in the sharing of the stuff, but also just not acknowledgments of the work that you're doing, because I find activism is such a thankless job a lot of the time, because not a lot of people are seeing what you're doing. So then it's just sometimes it's nice to hear people being like, you're doing a good job. and I think that's part of building community groups, because I like you, this past fall really hit, COVID started taking its toll, and the dreary weather's coming in. It was just this fall was brutal, and it's but you cope with it. And the one thing that I've had at least the benefit of coping with it is the community through my podcast and being able to talk to people about this stuff. And there is an element of community there that I think is important to building movements like this. I mean, especially movements on the left. That's the one thing we should be good at, right? Community and being there for each other,
Yeah. Yeah. I think we need to, I agree with you. Community is important, and I want us to be able, though, to forgive ourselves and give ourselves time and space if we just need to ball up in a corner and just cry and scream what is life right now?
Yeah. No, but I mean, that's of course, and that's part of pacing yourself too, and not beating yourself up about it, because I think at least some people who are tapped in, you can start to beat yourself up. I'm not being active enough. I'm not engaging enough. But knowing that you can't be there 100% all the time. You gotta find ways of dealing with that.
And that's why we need a big team, because when I can't do it, you should be able to do it, and so on and so forth. When we talk about burnout, I think it's just a natural human reaction to. We lost a lot last year. Last year was extraordinarily emotional. And, I think I learned, if anything, what last year was, whatever that was, is to prioritize self-care, prioritize making sure that you are okay, and making sure that you can get out of bed tomorrow. And then the next day, get out of bed and share a post. Yeah. And then the next day, get out of bed, and you know what I mean? And giving yourself time to get back into the fight. We are all fighting. This fight is strong. This fight is not going anywhere, because this fight has been going on for centuries, right? So I don't know.
So, I mean, since we're now back in the fight, I guess the next part was what happened with City Council. Because there was the meeting that at least I got invites to attend but could not attend. But I don't know.
Was it the budget?
I think it was the budget. Did you have opportunities to speak there, or was it? What was the point of that?
Yeah, so I'd never heard of it before, but that's to say that it's not like it hasn't happened, but it's called a public participation meeting, and where members of the community are able to go in and advocate, speak to council about their cause, ask them to look into something and review a part of the budget that they feel is needs adjusting, as it were. Uh, I'll put that, and so yeah, so we went. I went with Gal in person. I felt that it was safe enough to do so. They had provided proper social distancing methods, PPE, but we did advocate for an opportunity for people who didn't want to come in person to be able to call in, and it was Counselor Kayabaga who messaged me and said anybody who wants to speak will have to go into City Hall, whereas um, the counselors get to stay home and do it that way, which I'm just like, let's just.
Yeah.
She also was like, this isn't right, Alex, and so I'd called Counselor Mosley, and who then called Counselor Josh Morgan, and they worked over the weekend um, to get it changed so that people can call in. And I think that's the first time that's happened, where people were able to call in. So that is quite accessible. So it's a plus on everyone's side there. But we went in and we presented letters, statements, and you only get 5 minutes. And as you can tell, I am quite verbose.
Yeah.
I was sort of speed reading because I was like, I need all these facts, drop all these names, drop all these. So I don't know how much they retained, but outside, and a couple others, a lot of people called in with regards to Black Lives Matter and defunding the police, reviewing the budget, which I appreciate. Again, community, awesome job. Um, but it was more than that. I got on the phone with or emailed several counselors before and after, just saying, why are we not talking about the police budget? Why is it not even on the table after a global movement? After 10,000 people is the biggest protest London's ever seen.
Yeah.
The community has asked you to do something, and you guys are just kind of like, hey, no, we're not going to talk about it. I'm sorry, what? Like who's and don't get me wrong, I have no misnomers about what politics are, right?
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a democracy where the people, me and you, are in charge of situations, and it's turned into, well,
Yeah,
what it
but
is.
part of this is just I don't even know how to like put it. It's like an indication of how they can get away with it because of how low turnouts municipal elections are in Canada. You know, like if you compare our municipal elections compared to the federal or provincial, the turnout for the municipal elections are way down. People are less likely to get involved and are often confused about what's happening and don't participate. But like as you're pointing out, they're in control of the city's budget. They're in control of the London police budget. The city councils do a ton of stuff, and it would be amazing if we had more people like Ariel on the city council to fight for us, right? And I'm lucky because Ariel's my my ward councilor, which is
Mm-hmm.
nice, and it's been awesome. Like I mean, you know, I pretty much just play the supportive role of like go Ariel. Like
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, if I compared to if I
She's
had another
annoying.
counselor that I would be like, why aren't you doing the right thing, and like get mad at.
Yeah.
Uh, but it would be nice if we could have people challenge some of the other city councilors in town, and I think make our city council more reflective of I think London generally, because I even feel like if you look at both our provincial and our federal government, we tend towards more liberal or NDP governments, and yet our city council is very conservative.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I mean, Ed Holder, our mayor, used to be a member of the Conservative Party, the federal
Mm.
party. I mean, he's a conservative, but like, I guess they don't hold their party allegiance as as city people. I don't
No, well,
know.
they're supposed to be
Yes.
anyway.
But yeah, I just think like it would be nice because I remember like those chats were happening at like the various protests, but I don't. I think it's also difficult right now to like even think of mobilizing generally for other things. But I think one thing that'll help London is getting more people in the city council. But
I agree with you. I think that we should remind Londoners that it is, that they can do this. I never ran for council. I am interested, clearly I'm interested in politics, but I never ran for council because I didn't think that that was an option for me. I thought that you had to have all of these degrees and, all of this
Nope.
credentials. And then Trump happened to show us that no, you don't.
Yeah.
And I'm not likening any of our
No, I
counselors
know.
or people to that person. I just want folks to know that you can run for council, you can run for mayor, you can run for MP, you can run for all of the things.
But in ways, it's better that because if everyone who runs for government is a poli-sci or a lawyer of some kind, that's not representative of the public either. Like, we should want some people who are more reflective of. I mean, like,
Of the landscape, yeah.
I've been involved in union politics, and not everyone's great either. But like, then there's some people who it's like, just because they work for the London Transit Service doesn't mean that they're not good at like mobilizing, organizing, listening to the constituents, and getting the job done.
You make a very good point, Jody. I think, no, seriously, I was having this conversation with a friend over the summer, in that no one has told us, Black people, really, Indigenous people, that these opportunities can be yours as well. You're gonna have to fight for it. You're gonna have to rally for it, and told us essentially how to do it. I don't know if I'm making myself clear. I don't want to make it seem like we're stupid, or we're not. I'm not saying that at all.
It's reflective in like the fact that Ariel, isn't she the first Black woman city councillor in London?
Yeah.
And it's 2020. Like things like that. Well, it's 2021 now, but still, it's stuff like that where it's like, for it to take that long for that to happen is kind of mind blowing.
It is mind blowing, but then it's also like, well, yeah.
Well, yeah. No, you're right. Like, it's like more like me personally, morally mind blowing, but like historically makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Well, I find that even like while doing the podcast a very difficult thing to disentangle. Where sometimes like I study the right wing, and so like I understand the psychology and the motivations and all this, but then I'm still like morally I'm like, what are they doing?
Well, this is it. Like, it is such a struggle with, I didn't study the right side until there was this meditation. I meditate, and I use the app called Calm. Nice. And then there is this meditation. I don't know why it's a meditation, but how to converse about politics effectively. And it's run by a Black woman, and she suggests that we understand the other side. You cannot argue effectively only knowing your own facts. You have to know what is true to them, what they find true, in order to sort of sift through and get your arguments in properly.
See,
so
I have an interesting sort of different take on it, which is that like, given it depends on who, obviously, and it depends on how far to the right they are. But like, my thing is like, I think understanding them is good, or understanding people and their different thought patterns is good, because then you can adjust how you interact with them and the world with this knowledge. It's a part of reality, and understanding reality helps you engage with the world. But I've also learned that some of these people are in some ways too far gone, or like there's no amount of communication that can reach some people, and there's evidence to support that too. And so part of me is like, it's like learning to work with what you have, and if you can never convince a certain segment, if there's just a type of like ingrained bigotry in a part of the population, it's almost like, why spend your energy on that when we can like ignore them and mobilize the people who are closer to us, you know?
Yeah, and I didn't mean that, you're going to go in and talk
Yeah.
to these insurgents
Yeah.
and hold a Zoom meeting on the merits of and the value of Black life. I don't think it's not going to happen. It's not going to work. What I meant to say is that when we start talking about subjects like defunding the police, you need to understand why the police don't want to do that, why
Yeah.
some community members don't want to do that. You have to understand, because just sort of shouting your point of view is not an effective way to
Right.
institute change.
Especially in those institutional settings, you know. But that's why it's like it's more about like managing power, and it's about they'll listen when they feel some kind of threat. And threat could be an electoral threat, the fact that we're going to elect people who are not going to support budgets that support you, But it's like doing stuff like that will, I guess, ease the communication. When they feel like they'll have to make concessions. And I relate this back to union politics just because that's like the avenue that I come from. But like there's moments like that when you're dealing with the employer as well, right?
Yeah.
Where it's a negotiation, and sometimes they won't move until there's some tension or some sense of a threat, like you are going to go on strike or you're going to do something else, and that'll like get them to move and start maybe maybe thinking of things that we could do, maybe possibly,
Yeah, I think that this insurgency that we've seen in the States and here in Canada, and I want people to know that when we say it happens here in Canada, like there were people protesting in support of Trump here in Canada. I'm like, I don't know what you plan on doing, really what kind of change you're making, but they did it. They came out and they did it. And then you're seeing politicians like the Tool, O'Toole.
I was like, when you first said the Tool, I was like, that could apply to so many of them. And I was like, oh, the Tool.
The Tool. Make Canada great, or make Canada great again.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We have a running joke on our podcast too that I refuse to call him Aaron O'Toole. We just refer to him as Eric. Eric O'Toole. Because for some reason there was some like back when he first won the candidacy, somebody typoed his name and then it trended on Twitter. So I was like, I'm just not going to call him Aaron. And then
and that's yeah. I don't know if you saw on Twitter though. It has its drawbacks. There was a Michael Obama was trending. I'm like, that is just rude.
No, well, that comes from transphobia and other stuff that the right wing. I think that emanates from Alex Jones actually, which is. But when you were getting at to like the right wing and its connections to Canada, like there's a reason why I do my podcast, which is that even a lot of the stuff that happens in the States, like Rebel News, which I cover on my podcast, they gave a platform to Gavin McGinnis, who went on to create the Proud Boys, which is one of the main instigators in America. And that's not to say that like Canada exported it or whatever, but it's like they came from this culture that then he was able to go to America and create basically a terrorist organization, right?
I think, after every protest, I have experienced a racist that here in London. The last one being a couple of young teen girls who had brought a bucket of KFC and came up to the stage, and we were just sort of packing up, getting ready to go home, and they thought they'd be discreet, posing with their KFC bucket and the megaphone, and just being,
Like after one of the protests?
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah. And you just ignore it. I just went over there and I just took back my megaphone and I said, get out of here.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that, amongst a lot of things, one of the things I find extraordinarily disheartening is that there's still this high level of denial here in Canada that racism exists. I don't I don't know. Even with statistics and facts and Human Rights Commission. Why even is there a Human Rights Commission if there is no racism?
Well, and the thing is, you want to know something depressing. Again, this has to do with Rebel News, which I cover. But Ezra Levant, he challenged the Human Rights Commissions in Canada, and especially on the threat of hate speech laws. And he defended out and out neo-Nazis in doing this. And one thing that we've been over in our book is he denies that they are neo-Nazis or never even attributes their actual beliefs to them. He's just these poor people who just happen to say things online were brought to these human rights tribunals where they didn't have due process. And it's well, they have due process within the system of the human rights tribunals because it's supposed to be a more restorative justice model where you work with people and you come up, how do you restore society or whatever. But he sees that as somehow authoritarian. And he lobbied back in around, I want to say 2008 or 10, and he got Stephen Harper to change some of the laws within the human rights tribunals. And so some of these more hate speech stuff can't be processed. It's still a law in Canada. You're not allowed to use hate speech, but it now has to go to the actual courts, which cost more money and other stuff, rather than these human rights tribunals.
I read on Twitter, and I'm very new to Twitter. I've had an account forever, but I guess I'm old school. I'm just give me Facebook and I'm cool. Someone posted, they said, what is it? They said, not all conservatives are racists, but all racists are conservative. To say that you have people of this political party who are in charge of governing this nation and in charge of protecting the human beings that live here, who don't think that I have the right to live. People in power, people who make laws.
Which is why it gets to a point where, I do agree that not everyone who is a conservative is a racist in terms of some sort of internal, identity-based thing. But there's a part of working with a party that supports these people. It comes to a point that it's you, the police, are participating within a racist system in many ways.
Exactly. You're upholding that racist system. Yeah. You're subscribing to the bad apples, which is let's not get into the bad apple analogy, but you're subscribing to this system. And racist people, and I keep posting this on Twitter, racist people uphold racist systems. The system is inherently racist, and if you are on the side of the system, you are racist.
Yeah. Elron said in the chat, any acknowledgement of blackness is seen as a threat they have to antagonize to deal with their own anger. And then they said, Sean Ray of Brookings would say bad apples come from rotten trees.
Mm-hmm. And rotten trees are sprouted from rotten roots. Yeah. And in order to get rid of it, you got to get rid of the whole thing.
This should be a good moment, too, if anyone who's watching has any questions they'd like to ask Alex. Feel free. My final sort of question, although I think we might have already addressed it, which is fine, but is there anything that Black Lives Matter is doing right now in London, or is there anything that the community can do to support, or is there anything that's upcoming sometime in the vague future or anything like that, or are we just kind of
That's a lot. You always ask these thick questions, multi-level, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, that might be a problem too. Maybe I could. You're my first test interview.
Okay, I'm the guinea pig. Okay, cool. So what is Black Lives Matter doing now? I am pretty heavily, not heavily, you know, one of the things that I wasn't prepared for with regards to leading this organization was the bureaucracy and the time with which things actually get discussed. I'm not even saying like done, just discussed. So we have a lot of there's meetings upon meetings upon meetings, but often there's one meeting a month for this specific thing. So I'm with there's a meeting this month with the Thames Valley District School Board and their Equity and Inclusion Advisory Committee. They meet once a month though. So it's not like it's just a snail's pace. And I know we talked about burnout and I know we talked about things, but it's a snail's pace. But we go to these meetings and we're able to sort of go through mandates and policies and talk about sort of the demands that Black Lives had put forward, or right now I'm pretty heavily focused on the student resource officers and getting them out. We're talking about equity in education with regards to how does the board respond to racism in schools, racism perpetrated by teachers, racism perpetrated by students. So that's just one thing. Then there's obviously work with the council, recently with the budget. There's letters of advocacy. We donate, we support events that help homelessness or houselessness.
Because there was a post about that recently, right? Weren't they trying to evict a tent encampment somewhere in the city recently?
Yeah, so that tent encampment has been evacuated, and well, this is what I'm hearing from the news. Right. Displaced. What I'm hearing from the news is that they found homes for each of these people or these groups of people, and so yeah.
Yeah.
You asked more questions, but I don't remember.
No, I think you covered it. I just didn't know what, or if there's anything that we can do to support. I mean, I guess like you can, when we're done, plug the whatever websites or Facebook groups or direct them.
Yeah, and I'm very bad with delegating. That's one thing that I am very much like. I'm a self-employed person. I own my own company, and so if I just was like, I'll just do it kind of screen, and I'm just very bad at delegating. But you're right, I need to say this is what we need from you right now. I think one of the things though that I don't think I want to tell people to do, because I honestly, like, there is no path for activism. It's sort of, you either react to some situations like the protest earlier, or you're proactive in that you're trying to I don't want to say too much, but we're trying to do things before they come out. And, one thing that would really help is messaging your counselors, messaging the mayor. The mayor doesn't talk to us, by the way. He doesn't respond to our emails or anything. So maybe...
Of course not.
urge him to start talking to us. Message the school boards, message the police board and the police chief and the association. It's one thing for Black Lives Matter to constantly be at them, which we are, but it's another thing for community members to take part. Like, you don't have to send a slew of emails every day. Just send one email this week. Make that your goal. I'm going to send one email and say, this is the reasons why I think we need to divest funds into mental health care or whatever.
Yeah. Famous Horse just said that your camera is amazing and has a perfect background. And I was just about to acknowledge I had a moment of reflection of like how I love your neutral background.
What is this magic?
I don't have a studio, so I got coats hanging and my blinds.
Okay. Well, so my performing arts studio, we used to do film and television and all that kind of stuff. We used to do a lot of self-tape auditions and want to showcase people in the best light. So this is a wall back here. It's far away. I can't reach it. Like, it's far away. You can't see that I can't reach it, but I can't reach it. It's painted in a matte paint because glossy sometimes
Yeah, it
reflects
gets
the
that
light
glare. Yeah,
back.
yeah.
And
I
glossy also absorbs or holds shadows a lot more than matte does.
I was gonna go because in my basement I could hang up like a curtain and have like a neutral background, but
Mm-hmm.
then the problem is I'm closer to my furnace downstairs, which then like whenever the furnace kicks in, you'll get like a in the audio or whatever.
Yeah,
I just it's the I got to deal with what I have.
you have to. Exactly. You have to. You have to. This is just a room in my house. This is a spare room in my house. This is the only wall that I painted. Everything else, like that doesn't. I've got studio lights. I've got two studio lights, and I'm using a DSLR camera as opposed to just the webcam or the camera that came with the.
Like you're an artist. I don't know if like you have like can relate to this, but I think like some people they dwell too much on like perfecting everything first rather than just like start creating, learn, adapt, and then build an audience and then start. Because I find like for me it was like I just got to start creating. If I wait till I get better cameras or whatnot, I'll just never be
No,
creating.
you gotta just go. Like you just gotta go. All of that stuff will come.
Yeah. What? So this is less to do with the Black Lives Matter thing, but I was curious. What? So do you have a background in theater? Do you do theater work, or is it more music related?
It's all of it. It's my degree is actually in classical piano from Western
Nice.
piano performance, um, but I sing and I act and I was known to teach a couple of dance classes, but I wouldn't call myself a dancer by any means. It is not my forte. There's that, and then I went back to school and did a communications and PR degree from Fanshawe. And right now, I'm currently doing diversity and inclusion from Cornell University.
Nice. I have a college certificate in theater
Oh,
from
nice,
Fanshawe
perfect.
College.
From Fanshawe. Very cool, very
Yeah.
cool.
So I guess what are we alma matters or?
All actors.
Well, no.
Yeah,
Well you went to Fanshawe too, so that's but
yeah.
and then I technically went to Western, but I don't actually have a degree from there because I dropped out of my PhD.
Did you?
Yeah, yeah. I was doing a PhD in philosophy and reached the limit, like past my 4-year funding period, and was like, do I want to keep paying for this piece of paper that says that I'm special? Just because here's the
That's
thing is,
fair.
I reached a point where I was like, there's too many people wanting a professorship in philosophy that, and I personally, I was doing it because I love it and was like, I don't really want to be a philosophy professor, and so I don't want to be in fighting with other people to get the few jobs that exist. So why would I
Mm-hmm.
keep throwing money at this thing? But
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. I hope to do a master's in diversity and inclusion,
nice.
um, but I haven't quite decided. I think it's outside of music, it is my passion. And who knows, like I'm a performing artist, so like if we don't have a stage anymore, what's gonna happen, right? So
And Nick said, I know that feeling of perfectionism. I think that comes from a specific anxiety to get things right that most trained musicians go through. So
yes, we do practice until it is right. And so we carry that with us into our lives, and that's oof.
yeah, I mean, like I have the anxiety, but at some point, like you just have to do it, or else you'll just be trapped and never put anything out there. I used to play in a lot of bands, and like, you know, when I look, I cringe at my high school stuff. You know, we
You
all
know,
come
and
from somewhere. It's
yes. But you couldn't even, at the end of the day, like being in a band, you couldn't even really enjoy being in a band because there's this pressure of, well, we're gonna make it. We gotta make it.
yeah,
Like we're doing this so that we can make it, right? I was in a when I came back to Canada after I finished school, I went back to Toronto and I joined a band, a Pink Floyd tribute
oh
band.
nice.
And I played alto saxophone and I sang Great Gig in the Sky, and it was my favorite thing to do. This is essentially screaming for 3 minutes, but
Yeah, yeah.
and then I was in another band called Marcellus Wallace here in London, and it was like a sort of a funk inspired Motowny band. Um, but
Nice.
both of those, like, while it's great performing, great to be in music, the focus was always like, we gotta make
We
it,
gotta
gotta
make it.
make it.
Yeah, yeah.
Just like, ugh.
See,
I've never actually sat down and played because I could. Oh my gosh.
I mean, I used to. I haven't for a while. When I moved, so like I had bands like all through high school to up until the point when I moved to London to do my PhD here, and we made all kinds of music, and I think there was like the pressure to make it to a certain extent, but like part of me, I always knew that I kind of like wouldn't have made it to a certain extent, and it has less to do with my talent and more to do with just like I hated networking for music. And it's like specifically to music because there was a sense of like I hated constantly going to my family and friends to be like, come to the bar and watch us for like $5, you know. There's just something like weird about that. I found like networking with the podcast a lot more relaxing because like it's free, it's online. Like you don't have to
Yeah, yeah,
pay
yeah,
anything to
yeah.
come here,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's so there's like that sort of like piece of it is gone. So I don't mind promoting and networking and going on other shows and doing that, you know.
And I think too that there is this, like, because we're sequestered to doing this at home, like we're at home, this is your only option.
What else am I gonna do? Gonna have a chat with Alex.
There you go.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh man.
My thing that bugged me is to be a career musician, you had to either be a wedding band or teach. So I tried teaching, and it's not as rewarding as being noticed for your craft from my experience.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
I mean, I
Because
guess
I built my career, like I built my business on teaching.
yeah, I don't know. And I'm thinking about my thing too. Like maybe it's different if you're like playing a guitar or whatever, and you want to be noticed for that, but you're just teaching people. But I even like when I was doing philosophy, I felt it way more rewarding to teach it than to write a paper, personally. But
Well, because I think maybe at that, and since it's like a form of performance,
yeah,
right? And that's how I always approach my teaching is that, like, well, you know,
well,
I'm
there's
in
the
front of the class and they have to listen to me.
yeah. Well, it was part of the performance, but also like I felt, you know, having a student come up to you after class and like sit around and discuss the nuances of some like arcane philosophy that you're going over is like I don't know, that's rewarding too. You've like sprinkled some fun into their brain, and I don't know, there's something to that I always found rewarding. But like I kind of get that with the podcast too, knowing that like, you know, in some ways I have more people listening to the podcast than I ever had in front of me in a lecture hall.
Well, there
So
you go.
yeah.
There you go.
I think we're gonna wrap things up. We've gone a little over the hour mark, but that's
Oh,
fine. Uh, I had no plan of like when to stop it, but yeah, I thank you so much for coming on.
thank
Uh,
you for having me. It was awesome. Interesting conversation. I don't know if we got to all of the things you wanted to get to, but
I didn't really like have
you
a
know,
plan, but like part of I sort of saw this coming into it. One selfish impulse was just because like you know when you were mentioning how fall hit and you know things started to slow down and there was like and part of me is like I felt that too and the one thing is like we haven't had rallies and I can't expect rallies happening anytime soon, but I wanted to reconnect. My selfish reason was to get the inside scoop what's happening. feel reconnected a little
yeah,
bit, you know.
that's totally fair.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like, I wouldn't even like it is so risky right now. Like I don't understand it how we are breaking records for number of COVID cases
I
more than when it first hit. Like how are we besting ourselves? It's not okay. It's not
No,
an
I
okay
know.
situation.
I like I struggle with how to respond to this, because my wife's response has been like anger at people for not following the rules, and anger at the government as well. But and for me, it's like I find that tension the most difficult, because like as much as I have high hopes for people, like I realize that like, some people are gonna be like, well, I can get away with it just this once, and like they got things to do, and so part of me is like, the government should have been way better at dealing with this, of getting everyone on board, and creating, because like, we talk about solidarity, like this COVID stuff, like solidarity is like integral to that too. You need to make sure that the community is informed and knows that they're doing the right thing and it's for a good cause and this was no one's fault, and just support people. And they botched a lot of that, sadly.
I think solidarity, I think it's more solitarity as opposed to solidarity. Like, just stay away from people. But I'm curious to know. People are, and I'm one of those people. I have ideas about how this could be different. But what do you think the government, like, give me a handful of things, 5 things that the government could do differently or better?
Better? This is more of a retroactive thing. I think immediately, way back in the first increase of cases back in March, May, like March, April, May, they could have locked things down a lot quicker and nipped this in the bud right away, and done a lot more in having a quarantine regimen for people who leave or enter the country. I think they could have managed that a lot better. I also think the sort of wishy-washiness with the masks at first, even though I could see where they were coming, it has definitely had long-term problems, as now you have people questioning certain aspects of that. I also think that they should have helped people stay home, paid for them, and not done this like weird survey thing that they have done where it's like means tested and stuff like this. Because like right now I'm sitting in this weird nebulous position where I'm kind of self-employed with the podcast. I make some money there, but it's not sufficient to live off of. But I didn't have the podcast making that much money before the thing, and I'm unemployed and not looking for work because I got to take care of my kids. And so I'm in this weird, do I actually get the CERB or do I not get the CERB? And like, it's like you could have just paid people to stay home, take
basic income,
take a sort of hit like that, but then realize in doing that you're actually giving people an incentive to stay home, instead of making people have to go, should I work? But work might put me at risk, and like,
that's the incentive. I will pay you to stay home.
Yeah.
Because we can afford it. Let's be real.
And here's the thing: if you did that work, you put in that work earlier, before you let it to get to where we are right now, like we wouldn't be where we are right now, And the lead up to Christmas was the worst too, because they didn't want to tell people not to get together on Christmas, and so they fumbled around and they botched it, and like people went and visited.
We'll lock down after Christmas. Okay.
And here's the thing: is like I'm the type of person where I know how bad this is. So we had a quarantine Christmas. I did not get to see my parents, my in-laws. We found ways to like Zoom chat with them and stuff like this. But I know there's definitely people who ignored those rules and hung out with them.
I think some of the things that you're saying can still be implemented. I think I'm in agreement with you with regards to lockdowns. Like, we had sort of a mock down, as I've heard it called, and it had long-lasting effects, but not the effect of eradicating this virus. So if you had gone all the way, the loss of my business would have probably been worthwhile. But I've lost a business, and COVID is worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And to say that I lost my business because it didn't qualify for this help, this funding, this, that, and the other, it's just absolutely ridiculous. And now when you apply for the financial aid, you basically have to beg them for it, right?
I mean, I've still been taking it, but like I'm in this. I haven't been spending the aid either because like I'm now paranoid that the government's going to be like, yoink,
you have to give
you.
it back. And that's what they're doing. They're saying
Yeah.
to people, oh, you have to give it back now. What?
And here's the thing: it's the easiest thing to sell. It's amazing to me because it's the easiest thing they could have sold, because this virus is nobody's fault, you know. And here's the thing: is like, I don't think when it comes to welfare that being in poverty and being in a situation where you can't afford food even outside of a pandemic, I don't think that's people's fault either. But you definitely have this conservative narrative, right? Which is like, well, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and all that crap, right? But when it came to this virus, that is the easiest sell. You can't blame a virus on some like personal responsibility failure, you know? And just be like, look, it was no one's fault. We're just giving people money to stay home. Boop, that's it. Like,
Or you do actually accept the blame for poor management of, well, we have one case of COVID. It's fine. Keep the borders open. Keep the planes flying here, there, and everywhere. It's totally fine. It's just one case. Okay.
well, there's elements like I can get behind wanting to keep airplanes going because there's certain things like there's certain aspects of even like our essential stuff that requires air flights, right?
But
Then it's like, but it's managing it appropriately, you know?
I think that's where we start to lose the goalposts when we're like, okay, there's certain things, there's a couple of things here that, but that's in everything, you know? And that's why our lockdown wasn't effective, because we held on to these certain things.
Well, but as much as I agree that that's true. For example, the way Doug Ford specifically has gone around labeling certain things essential and other things not essential seems like arbitrary, right? But that's the difference, where it's like if they communicated this with the public better, such that they go, look, we're gonna make this still remain essential, these air flights, and the reason why is because like they're bringing in shipments of food that we need to eat. I think people would go, eating, essential, I get it, right? But it's like I feel like they haven't put in that work such that when they unroll what is essential or not essential, I'm left going, why? Why do we need to build this building right now when we have plenty of homes? You know what like, send those construction workers home, pay for them to be home instead of on the job site where they're giving each other COVID. Like, it just
and then bringing
feels,
it home to their families.
Yeah.
My husband's a construction worker, so I'm here with you. I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. I think that I was reading about Australia today. Is it Australia or is it New Zealand?
Both of them have almost no cases. They clamp down pretty good. And it frustrated, if you want to get back to the rebel, like they went in on Australia being like, look how harsh their lockdowns are. And look how like mean they are to their citizens. When
America had 22 million cases of COVID. 22 million people with COVID.
They're probably at 400,000 deaths now. I haven't
There's
checked.
like 330 last time I checked. I think I checked last night. 330, but 40,000 people could have died today. You know.
381,000. 381,000 dead in America. Yeah, it is disgusting. I mean,
they have no value for life. They have no value for life.
We labeled one of our episodes basically kill us for the economy is what it is, you know.
Wow.
And that's what this is. It's like somehow the economy is more important than your life. And that's what it comes down to for conservatives. At least most of these conservative governments that are unleashing these policies, who are unwilling to commit to things like a lockdown, you know. And
as long as they are not affected.
Yeah. But they'll never be affected because they're the ones with all the yachts and the money. They're the ones with $100,000 sitting on boards.
That's what it is, right?
Yeah. I mean, we were leaving on a hopeful note, and now.
Sorry, I don't know how it started. If I started it, I'm probably didn't mean it.
No, that's good.
Gregory.
It's it's it is amazing to me. Like I keep thinking too, like March is coming up fast and I'm gonna be experiencing two birthdays under lockdown. And it's I just can't wait for this to be done. Give me 8 of those vaccines. Let's go. Just let me out.
The vaccine drip. Just
Yeah, no, and an IV. Oh yeah, no, I'm waiting, and I'm worried too, because like I've kids as well, and my son should be starting grade 1 in September, and we've pulled him from school because online kindergarten is just not great. He's
like,
just
what?
distracted, confused. He gets upset because like, the teacher's looking at like 30 Zoom children, and like how do you see where kids' hands are, and just like it's a mess. And I would love for him to go back to school in September, and they're now saying that like the vaccine won't get to us until maybe August, but then like will it get to my kids by August? And then like
Probs not.
yeah. And so
Probs not. But like, in going into that retrospect, sort of what they could have done, there's a lot of empty office buildings, a lot of empty places to hold classes. And we have lots of qualified people to teach.
oh, but you're gonna pay for those teachers? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, like it's amazing. We almost forget about it, but like the school strikes ended just as we were going into lockdown.
Yeah.
And
That's crazy. Wow.
and it was amazing.
Seems like forever ago.
And what they were fighting was paying people who were paying people who needed raises, who were making who were part-time teachers or whatnot, and giving them the ability to improve their wages. Because Doug Ford, when he came in, he put a wage cap on public sector workers. And yeah, it's fun times. But this is we'll end with this. I mean, this is what I hope locally at least, that we can fix our city council, and maybe have the opportunity to put more pressure on these people to actually defund the police locally. And so that's one step towards some sort of improvement, right?
It has to happen.
Yeah.
A mix of locally and provincially. So the fight is a long journey. It is a long journey, but slow and steady wins the race. So.
Well, I'm with you, and you're welcome back anytime. Thank you for being my first interview.
That's awesome. Thank you.
All right, everyone in the chat, I am going to head out now, and yes, thanks for joining, and thanks to the YouTube audience that might watch this later. I don't know how this technology. I feel sometimes like a boomer.
What are these buttons?
Yeah. Actually, that reminds me, because you can do this thing on Twitch now where we can raid somebody. No, doesn't look like. I usually like to raid channels like me that have a little bit of a smaller audience, but none of them are on right now, so we're not going to raid them. What that does is it sends my audience to them, and they'll start watching their content. But that's not going to happen this time. But Alex, do you want to drop like maybe your social media or something like that, where people can find
okay, you? Yeah, you can find Black Lives Matter London. It's Black Lives Matter London on Instagram, and on in Facebook we have a Facebook group, Black Lives Matter London. I think it's Black Lives Matter - London, Ontario.
Because there's a group. Black Lives Matter in London, England as well.
Yes, and so we get a lot of their people, and I'm sure we get ours. We used to have a Facebook page, but somebody reported us, and we got taken down. So join the group. Just click to join the group. We'll let you in. But I think in ways it's better. We get discussions, and we get, people ready to let's go. So
awesome. Well, thank you.
Should I mention me?
Yeah, your personal stuff. Yeah.
My personal stuff, it's all full. Like I post a lot of politics.
That's perfect for this
I am
audience.
Alexandra Kane. It's I am Alexandra Kane. Underscores under each one in on Instagram and on Facebook. You can follow me at Alexandra Kane.
Awesome. Thank you. We're ending the stream now. Goodbye.
Yeah. Bye.